Thank you, everybody. I'm so glad that you joined us, Jimmy. Interesting. I had my friend Chad Bennett. I've been watching him for a while. He was doing cold plunges every day. And I'm like, what is going on with this guy? I don't know if Chad Bennett, he runs like cybersecurity company, really cool guy, great professional. And I was just like, what's going on with him every day? And I'd send him messages. I was like, hey man, is that getting any easier? It's not getting that much easier. And I said, what's got you inspired right now, man? And he said, I recently joined this group called the Walk Group. And to be honest, I think it'd be something you'd be very interested in. So I looked up the Walk Group. I saw your video, the Walk Group documentary, so to speak. And you immediately started talking about men who were living in a state of loneliness. You described this loneliness, and it really got my attention. And I thought, man, and then I went ahead and got your book, Being One. Isn't it Being One? Be One. And so I read the whole book and got emotional, may have shed a tear here and there, just some really good stuff. And I was like, I would love to have you on. We take people through what I call a leap year. So it's like a year of changing their life. And so many of them are trying to change their life, but some of them may be trying to tune up their mask. You know what I mean? It may be more about tuning up that mask. And so before we get into sharing your story a little bit, I'm just going to pop into a hot question and then we'll share your story. Maybe you have these stats written down on your arm or something, but loneliness, man, tell me about, is it an epidemic? Like what is going on with loneliness for the modern man?
Yeah, the exact stats I won't have off the top of my head, but we're more connected than ever in this world. But as far as technology and things like that, but we also, more men and women feel more alone than ever before. There's a lot less opportunities for this community and for people to just get together and they connect on a deeper level, right? We have a lot of surface things. A lot of people see what we show them, but we don't really get those deeper connections. And the problem with that, and the reason why it's causing this problem in society today, is when people don't know where to turn and they don't have that friend to go talk to, that's when they make poor decisions. That's when they really it starts to compound on itself. And so what we try to do with We Are the They, which is what you're referring to, is help men to be seen. And I think that's the main thing that's missing, is a lot of people are connected, but they're not really seeing each other. You're not talking about the real shit. You're not talking about what's really going on. And so even when you get love from somebody else, you don't really feel it because you're thinking, they're just giving me this version of me. They're just loving this version of me, or they're trying to. And even the love that you're getting, you can't accept. And we see this over and over again all the time.
I see, yeah. And you and I share a background. You grew up as an LDS member, right? I joined when I was 20. And so, but you grew up in I would say, a community that was not a meritocracy necessarily, but definitely striving for success, striving for this aspect of being worthy. You had gotten into, tell us a little bit about what led you to this point in your own life. I know that you had sold potentially the most expensive house in Utah and it kind of arrived at the peak of your career. What headspace were you in when you're at the peak of your success?
Yeah, no, and I think a lot of us, everybody has the same two fears, that we're not lovable and we're not enough. And this was very real for me. I'd had an experience where essentially my father had wanted me to get held back in school when I was in 8th grade to be a star athlete, and I didn't want to do it. So I told him no. And he was just trying to do the best he could, but he basically said, okay, well, so you're not good enough. You're never going to play baseball again. And all I heard was, you're not good enough. And I wrote that underneath my hat and to motivate me, right? For 3 years, I looked at that every single day, all day long. And so naturally, of course, I became an achiever. And no matter what I did, I was chasing this feeling of, once I accomplish this, or if I get this, or if I do this, then I'll be worthy of love. And so for me, it was really difficult because no matter what I achieved, there's still a little bit of an emptiness to it. And so I was on this journey of self-love and trying to figure all this out. And in my journey, like you said, I had a lot of success. I was driven by this need, and it pushed me to do some amazing things in real estate and other ways. And I hit the peak of my career about 6 years ago, where that month I sold the most expensive home ever in Utah. I was the number one agent in the state that year for commission. And there was just something a little bit missing still. And so that I went down this journey, and I'd been doing a lot of my own work and self-development. And I discovered this part about my hat in a meditation. I was doing some things and ultimately got to a place where I was able to start to heal that a little bit. And I thought, what if I could help other men with this as well? And so, at the peak of that career at that point, and I'd had a lot of other successes and things like that, but it was just, I knew something was missing. And what really opened my eyes is when I decided I wanted to do something more impactful, it didn't just come to me right away. It took me about 2 years to figure out what that was going to look like. And in that, it was pretty funny because what I thought the idea was going to be. It just changed so much as it always does, but I was always working on it. And then I realized something my mentor, Ed Milet, says all the time. He says, you're most qualified to help the person you once were. And so for me, I thought, all right, what am I the best at? What am I the best in the world at? What can I truly teach other people that would change their lives? And I realized that in my life, I had accumulated some amazing, really close friends. And the thing I did better than anybody else was help build friendship. All my friends had met through me, dozens of different friends, and they did all become best friends. And I said, that's what I'm going to teach. That's what I'm going to help other people to do. And so in that process, I decided to turn over my real estate team to my partner, Tyler, and go all in on doing this. And that's how this program of what I'm doing now came about. And because it's like, for me, I was like, I think we all feel like this imposter syndrome of who am I to teach others else? And so I stuck to the one thing I knew I could do really well. And that's to help people connect. And I think the pandemic really showed this, shined a spotlight, COVID and all that. Up until then, I think we felt like we were probably more connected than we were, and COVID really magnified it. And so I think it created this spot where people were like, where do I go to truly find a community and to find people that I can do life with in every way?
See, that's interesting. So was it kind of like an accumulation, or was there like an aha moment where it's, you know what, this is my impact. This is what I want to do. How was that for you?
It was an aha moment. It was like, oh, it needs to be a men's group, and I'm going to teach them how to build friendship. Like, that part was the aha. And then I just started back tracing all the different experiences that I had that had helped me connect deep and different. And I said, if I can put these all into a program, I think it'll work. It's actually cool. I got a text just barely from one of my guys in my group. I'll text you. I'll show you this because it's relevant to, I literally just got this a couple hours ago. And I get these almost every day from my guys. But he said, hey, bro, my gratitude and respect for you grows with every interaction. You're an amazing example to me of pouring into others and finding those that pour back into us. I'm sitting on a plane to California to go to vacation to Disneyland with 4 other Watt brothers, their wives and families. Your words of finding your best friends that you will do life with resonate so loud in my soul as I sit here. I found 50 other men who I'll forever be connected with for the rest of my life. Some I've naturally grown closer to initially because of family and similarities, but I have no doubt I'll have 50 lifelong friendships forged because of Watt. And this is just the beginning. I got that one today. I get these all the time, man.
So you help men to create safety in themselves and then to share that safety in relationship to their friends, to create space to be fully known.
Yeah, so here's my whole philosophy is none of us can change anybody else, but what we can do is create a container safe enough for people to be inspired to change themselves. So my whole job is to create safe spaces. All I try to do is create a container where people can open up and be vulnerable and be authentically them. And so that's the whole philosophy of my program, and everything that I do is to try to help create as much safe space, both virtually, in person, one-on-one, that I can for other men.
Okay. What do you feel like is the number one obstacle that men have in actually breaking out and saying, I'm going to share something that I think is going to jeopardize someone's ability to love me? And I have a really interesting example about your story I want to bring in a second, but let me just start with there. What's the obstacle what's stopping men from just sharing that space?
Sure, a lot of people have been punished for doing it in the past, right? You open up about something and people don't care, or they throw it in your face. If I'm just showing you a mask of me, even if it's subconscious, if you reject that, there's no pain, because it's like, I'm just not telling you everything. I'm not showing you everything. When I truly get vulnerable and I open myself up, I take my armor off. If that gets rejected or if that gets thrown in my face, that's a death blow. And I think a lot of men have unfortunately been punished in the past for being vulnerable. They don't have the safe spaces. They don't know where to go to find them. I think that's one of the reasons why a community like mine was needed, because they're not out there. And frankly, you shouldn't be vulnerable with just anybody, because if you open up to the wrong people, they can use it against you and you really cause some damage. And so I think that's really why men are, and honestly, there's a big difference between, okay, I'm going to tell you what's going on with me, and becoming a victim or bitching about it. Like, men are still expected to carry that load. It's just, hey, let's carry it together. Let's help each other with this. But I think ultimately a lot of people, you either have to take a hard look at yourself. Okay, what do I need to change about myself? Or you try to make the world around you wrong. And for a lot of people, it's easier to just make the world around them. So they'll blame politics. They'll blame the president. They'll blame race or whatever it might be, whatever thing that they makes them feel better about their own inadequacies. And instead of having to work on themselves, they get to just blame the world around them.
I see. And the We Are the They movement, you were doing some work. Was it for sex trafficking, child trafficking, right? Were you doing some work in that sphere, right?
Yeah, so I was part of a couple of groups that would go undercover and help rescue kids that were being sex trafficked. Yeah, I did that for several years, but ended up going on, I think, 13 ops total. And yeah, you're probably alluding to how the name came about, but one of those ops, it was actually a really dangerous one. We were in Latin America and the other guys, they had guns, they had a perimeter set, this whole thing. It was a pretty dangerous one, but we ended up doing the takedown and had this beautiful rescue. And afterwards, after the rescue, my girlfriend picked me up in the truck from the airport, and it was pretty scary. So I was just telling her the story and getting into it, and she pulled over and she surprised me. She's like, "Hey, I don't want you to do this anymore." And I was like, "What are you talking about? Did you not just hear what I said? Did you not just hear about this rescue? And this is gonna be a part of my life forever now." And she's like, "No, it's important, Bill. Why can't other people just go? Why can't they just go do it?" And without even thinking, I said, "There is no they. We are the they." And when I said that, man, it just resonated to my soul. I was like, "Oh my." Like it's gonna be my motto for life. And so that's how when I launched the program, I naturally just wanted to. I already had that motto tattooed on my arm or whatever, but I wanted to use that because it means a lot. So we don't wait for other people to step up. We are the ones that make that difference. And
You have the tattoo? Let me see that tattoo.
yeah, the word
That's it. Okay, there's we are today.
yeah.
I was listening to your story the other day, and the work that you did, like some of those people that you rescued and some of the men involved with that could end up at Pelican Bay for the things they were doing.
Oh yeah, no, they were
Right?
literally like trafficking children. Yeah, it was all out of the country so that they wouldn't end up there. But I'd had other experiences where where I'd gone and had these special moments where I had one at Pelican Bay and there was a group of us that went up there as entrepreneurs to teach the inmates and just connect. I was pretty nervous because these are like a lot of the people were in for like life and murder and things like that. And yeah, we had these really beautiful experiences. And again, it's like one of the problems men have is they all feel like they're going through things themselves. They feel like they're the only ones that are handling a certain situation, whatever it might be. And a lot of times you just feel it's overwhelming. And so I do this exercise at that Pelican Bay where the person in charge of this exercise would have all the entrepreneurs on one side and the inmates on the other. And they would essentially read a series of questions. And if it related to you, then you were supposed to take 2 steps up to the line and be seen. And it was very interesting because I started asking questions like, if you had a mom or dad tuck you in every night, please step up to the line. 90% of entrepreneurs did, none of the inmates. If you ever had a sibling get shot and killed, step up to the line. Like half the inmates, none of us, right? And it just kept on, and you really got to see the different ways that we were raised in life. And so I took that same experience because it was such a moving experience. And really, my whole program has been based around these emotional moments I've had, or these big moments that I've had. So that particular one, when that happened, I said, what if I did this with the guys, but I related it more to them? And so I ask a series of questions. I'll say, for example, all right, if you've ever been divorced, step to the line. And if you've ever been cheated on, step to the line. If you've ever cheated on somebody, step to the line. And I go through about 50 questions, and we're all 50 guys in a circle. And by the time everybody's gone through these questions, there's not a dry eye in the room because you start to see, oh my gosh, I'm not alone in this. And that's what kind of starts to build our community together. But yeah, there's just all these different experiences that I had. I just put my own spin on it and created this experience that I hoped would help men to be vulnerable with each other.
You just have this interesting where you were actually combating some of these men, and then you end up in the place where these men ended up in Pelican Bay trying to help them reconnect to themselves. And it just made me think somebody potentially in Pelican Bay who's committed atrocities, for example, or done things, killed, raped, things like that. Is there hope for someone who is truly dealing with something that nobody could potentially feels like nobody could accept them for what they did? Do those men, how is it different to deal with somebody in that situation versus somebody who was like cheated on their wife, or which is, don't get me wrong, it's bad, but
Yeah, that's tricky, man. I did a podcast with Ricky Williams a couple weeks ago, the Heisman Trophy winner, and he said one of the most profound things I've ever heard. And he said, healing starts when you tell somebody something expecting judgment to come, but the judgment never comes. And I was like, damn, that's good. And I don't know what the answer is for some of these people. If you're trafficking kids or sex crimes against children, I do have a hard time thinking they can fully be rehabilitated. So I don't know what look like. When you start to get some empathy, though, like these kids that were in for life for murder, for example. I remember at one point they put us in the solitary confinement at Pelican Bay, and these kids are in cages. I say kids because they're like 21, 23, 24 years old. They were kids. And you start to hear their story, man. And their parents had them selling hard drugs when they were 7 years old, and they had to shelter. They didn't get food, and that led to one thing and another, and then they had to protect their territory, so they ended up killing somebody, and then boom, life in prison. You're like, holy shit, poor guy never had a chance. And these are human beings, right? And so I think every story obviously is a little bit different, But I think when Brene Brown talks about this, anytime you lean into somebody's story, there's empathy to be had there. And I think that's what I took away from going to Pelican Bay or working with some of these quote unquote murderers essentially is there's and I do think there's modalities out there for that. It's funny because a lot of people are like, dude, my brother, he's so messed up, he needs your program, blah 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 blah. And then other people will be like, dude, I know this guy, he's the worst, he needs your program. I'm like, it's not really usually who picks up the program, because there's this level of any kind of self-development or self-work you're doing where you've got to be the one that makes that decision. And the community as a whole, the one rule I have within We Are the They is you can't be a liability to the people that love you. So you've got to get your house in order. You've got to get your emotions in order. You've got to get your finances in order. You got to get your physical appearance in order, right? Like your ability to, if shit goes down tomorrow, can you protect yourself? Can you protect your family? Can you run? If you had to hike to the mountains to get out of danger, would you be able to do it? And so I think we all have a responsibility as a community. Everybody should be, the idea is to give more to the community than what you take. JFK famously said about America, he said, ask what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And it's a similar type thing with community and family and everything else. And I think ultimately a good man is a man that provides for other people, that creates safety and security, that doesn't take from those that love him. It's not a liability to the people around him. You know, you can give a lot of people courage and hope and faith by showing up a certain way and holding a certain frame where they, just by association to you, can walk with more confidence. And I think that's a lot of what a good man is.
I see. Interesting. Jimmy, I know that you had LDS in your life, and there's aspects of it that were powerful, the community, right? Even some of the having a faith in God and everything. And we heal our relationships by being truthful in them and bringing our integrity to them. But how do you help a man who's just trying to heal from his own stuff, who's trying to get back into integrity and self-love? Do you guys have things that are not necessarily for the relationships, but for really finding self-love again?
Yeah. Again, this is what my whole program is about essentially. But I think when we're vulnerable, authentic, and integrity, it starts with that. And the whole integrity piece is the most important, because again, we have to, when we're open about, we have to first make a change. If you haven't decided to make a moral stand and change what you're doing, you're not going to be able to progress very far. The second thing is you got to have accountability. You got to decide that you're going to change your behaviors. You got to go, you know what, I'm going to change the way I've been acting towards this thing. And then you got to have a community around you to support you, because it's just almost impossible to do it alone. Accountability to those things. As you go through this process and you do all that, you start to create that love for yourself, right? Confidence comes from making ourselves promises and then keeping them. Anytime you say you're going to do something and you don't, you lose confidence. Anytime you say you're going to do something and you do. And so I think it's self-love starts. It's not like just taking baths and whatever. It's, hey, saying you're going to do a thing and then you do the thing, right? It's like doing a hard thing. I had Andy Frisell on my podcast. He's the founder of 75 Hard. And he said something really cool that I've always loved, and I love sharing this, is he said, Jimmy, the whole reason I created that was because if men knew to have a great life, all you have to do is win today. If you win today, it's about being present, right? Because you can't worry about the past, can't do anything about the future. But if you can have a kick-ass day today, and you can stack enough of those days in a row, you're going to have a kick-ass life. And so 75 Hard, the whole point of why he created that was to help people realize how to stack wins. And so the whole goal is to win the day. Set a goal for today, do the thing today, do it again tomorrow, do it again the next day. And as you stack those wins, and so that has the same thing with self-love, right? And confidence and all that is like just showing up and doing the things you say you're going to do.
How does that look like as a member when you come into the walk group? What's a day in the life of I know you have a leadership group and another group. What's it like to be in the group?
Yeah. So we have a call once a week as a group. We have really cool guests on. Sometimes I'm teaching it. This week coming up, I just prepped the call. It's going to be, I titled this one, The 5 Situations Where You Should Just Remain Silent. And we'll just do some teachings about some different things around that. Last week I had Sadia Khan on. I think she's like probably the top relationship expert in the country right now. She's all over social medias, and she's a friend of mine. So she came on and taught us. And so we're constantly getting teaching, right? So it's all the things I just talked about to make a change. So we help each other by going through these exercises. We have meetings in person every couple months. And then there's online stuff. And we have a course online that takes you through all this. So most people don't have a knowledge problem. Like in some cases there is. But we teach people the information. And then there's accountability. You have accountability partners. You're expected to show up to these calls. And it's an hour a week. You have 168 hours. You're spending one of them going, I'm going to better myself. I'm going to work on me. And as you do all these things, you start to see progress. You start to see movement. You start to see lives change. I'll give you one other one. I just got this text today too from a buddy, and he actually got his friend into the group about a year ago. And this guy has lost 52 pounds. His entire life has changed. If I showed you this before and after, you'd die. But he said he sent this to his buddy who got him into the program. And so the buddy sent it to me, but he said, bro, let's get real for a minute. The ripple effect of you boldly walking into my mansion November 2023 and saying, dude, I'm watching you crumble and I have the solution. Trust me, you need this. Good God, imagine if you hadn't walked your arrogant ass into my office that day. Life would be different for me, bro. We both know this. It haunts me to genuinely see the result of you not taking action, following your intuition. I love you so much. There are a few of us that are true lifers. And he sent that to him because this guy went all in, though. He did the things that we're teaching. And because any program out there, and a lot of people will join a gym or they'll join a program so they feel like they're doing something. This is the example of a guy that went all in and he got the rewards for that. And so I think that truly is one of the most important pieces. It's not enough to just want to do it, like truly integrating it and taking the action and doing the exercises. And that's what it looks like.
I see, man. What's on the horizon for it? I know you jumped into this. You created an awesome group. It's growing. What excites you most about the future? What's the big vision look like for you?
Yeah, man. A lot of the stuff I'm doing right now, it's cool. I think the program grows as I grow. And so I spend 2 to 3 hours a day working on me, doing exercises, reading, writing, working with my coaches, trying to make myself a better person. And in return, I think I'm trying to grow the program. I'd love to take this to the world, man. I think this can be a movement that it can inspire men in general. And so my job is to make this as good as possible and then share it with as many people as we possibly can. I don't have this goal of like certain numbers I'm trying to hit or anything like that, as much as I'm just trying to affect as many lives as we can, and truly love the place I'm at with it, man. It's just, it's there. It's making this huge impact, and being able to see that every day is pretty awesome. So for me, it's just keeping this going, keeping the momentum going, and working hard on myself.
Who's the person, if you could nail it down to one person, who's the person that has inspired and pushed you the most in life?
Man, there's so many people that I'm really lucky, all the mentors and guides I've been able to have. I'll never forget, like, the first time I started digging into Tony Robbins. He's the goat of this stuff. And I got to come up with my life's purpose and what my values were going to be and all different things. And that was the first time I actually truly understood myself and the reason why I act the way I do and do the things that I do. And I think a big piece of that was Tony. And so for me, it's Tony. I've had the chance to, he actually went undercover with us a little bit. I've had the chance to meet him several times, and he personally walked me across the hot coals once. But that's one person I think for me that has made a giant difference. But I've had amazing mentors, man. Ed Milet was a one-on-one coach. Neil Strauss was a one-on-one coach of mine. Some of these guys that are just unbelievable. And each one of them, the reason why, here's my theory is I want to find, this is the fifth part of actually to make change that I was talking about earlier, is find a mentor. And what you want to do is you want to find somebody that used to be where you're at, that is where you want to be, and somebody that inspires you, and somebody you just want to be around more. And so that's what I do. So I look for people where that's the case, and then I do everything I can to spend as much time as possible around them.
See, how about social media these days? How do we keep an integrity relationship with social media? It's almost like social media has become a place to build the mask, right? It's a different way to do it. How do we have a relationship with social media that could be healthy, that could actually be a way of connecting with people? How do you do it?
Yeah, I've gone through several iterations of social media, right? I had my moment when I was trying to feel like I was enough, where I was just trying to show people how amazing my life was. What I try to do now, a couple things. Number one is I took them off my phone. I took social media off my phone. I only have it on my home computer now. The experience just isn't as fun, and you just don't get caught up in it. And so I think that's one thing, like using it as a tool. I've curated my entire list so it only shows me positive messages. Like I have half the people I follow are muted, and I've deleted half the people I used to follow. I think that the key is to become a creator, not a consumer. And so you want to spend more time creating content than you do consuming it. But then I just like using it as the tool that it is. It's a marketing tool. And so I think that social media, where it becomes dangerous, is when we get caught up in trying to do what the masses want, right? Like posting things because they'll do well with engagement, or losing ourselves that way a little bit, or trying to compare ourselves to everybody else. That can get, difficult too. But it's such a beautiful tool, man. I think I had on recently on my podcast, I had the founder of Tinder, I had the founder of MySpace. And it was interesting. These guys don't let their kids use these things. And so they know how addicting they can be, right? Like they don't use them themselves either. They got 2,000 followers. It's funny. And so
they know how the sausage is made now. Interesting. I see. And you said you're doing a lot of work yourself still. You're doing a lot of work on yourself. What is it that you're mostly focused on for yourself? You hear a guy like you and it's, man, this guy's got authentic relationships and has connected with his own sense of self-worth. But what does a guy like you work on? What's your main focus?
Yeah, no, I can show you right now. This is some breathing exercises that I'm doing right now. This is with one of my coaches. I'm doing some work with my breath work and like trying to heal kind of
Mm.
past wounds and things like that still. And I work with just, I'm always trying to study, learn, grow, become better at what I'm doing. And the more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. And so there's always
Mhm.
another layer to unlock, man. It's a never ending cycle of things to learn. But what I do, two things is, so one, I'll study topics, right? So I'm like, okay, so coming up in like a month and a half, I got a retreat with my guys. We're gonna really dig into the father wound, and so I'll be studying that a lot for the next month and a half. But then also, if there's just a certain topic that I want to dive into, I'll just go into it and really try to understand that and study that. And I spend almost an hour a day studying. I love it. I think it's really important. And it's on my entire bookshelf. I got a warehouse, an office, and a home office books that I've read or that I'm reading. Yeah, I just think we should be constantly learning. I love it. I love to learn. I fell in love at a young age with learning. I didn't necessarily love school, but I loved learning. And so for me, I'm just fascinated by it. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and we were talking about, somebody said something about having an astronomy class in high school or in college, and I'm like, dude, I slept through my entire astronomy class in high school, but if I had that class today, I would be nerding out because of energy and the universe, all these different things. That'd be the coolest thing ever. And I was like, oh, that'd be fun to study again. So I don't know, whatever just interests me, man. If I
Okay.
run across something that fascinates me, I'll dive into it and start studying it.
Got it. And how do you incorporate spirituality, the mysteries and or belief in a creator? What's after this life? Now that you're post-Mormon, how do you incorporate that to yourself and to the group? Or do you?
Yeah, no, spirituality is one of the 8 pillars of our program. It's a very important piece, and that relationship with God is truly everything. For me, I did so much work to get that relationship with God that I have now, and I truly feel confident that He guides me in my decisions and what I'm doing, which is really beautiful for me. And it was really hard to get to that. My relationship's always evolving, and when I'm in an organized religion, yeah, I knew where I was from, why I was here, where I was going, what's right, what's wrong. And turns out I didn't know any of that. And so I don't try to profess to know anything at this point, but I have beliefs that I have, and I really love my beliefs. The one strong belief I have, there's two of them, is I think everything that God cares about has to do with our intention, because an all knowing, all loving God is going to look at what our heart was. Why did we do it? What were we trying to do? And then the second piece is I think that this world is karma, and karmatic energy is very real. And so if we put out good, will find us. If we put out bad, it's going to come back to us. And I think above all else, those are my two main beliefs now. But yeah, I went through an entire process. 31 years, I was all in on the church in my youth. And then I spent about 2 years studying relentlessly to try to figure out what was next. And now I use different modalities. My favorite thing to do, I think that God finds us in solace, silence, and solitude. And so I love to go up into the mountains and just sit. I love to go for hikes. I went for one yesterday just by myself for an hour. I'll go sit in nature for an hour today. But I think that is where we get the answers, and that's where God talks to us, and through prayer and stuff. And so whatever anybody's belief is, but I think those are my strongest beliefs, are just everything's about our intention and everything's karma.
You have a meditation practice?
And not so much a practice. I call it a morning embodiment routine where I'm trying to do certain things. So I have some breathing that I do. I have meditation that I do. I go for a walk every morning. Actually, when one of my guys will meet me at my front door and we go for a coaching call walk every single morning, which is really fun and really cool. And so there's a lot of things that I'm doing for sure, but each of the things that I'm doing, again, is just a lot of it right now is the slowing down. It's doing less. But I don't really have a set routine that's like stringent. I just have certain things that I try to do every single day.
Got it. I see. And if there's a man who's watching this, and we talked about loneliness, some men don't know they're lonely yet, right? Some men don't know that they're dealing with these issues. What do you think would be some key factors for a man to self-realize I may be in this situation and not able to look at it? Is there any kind of key?
Sure. Yeah. I had a guy that he's been in the program again about 9 months, and this particular guy gave up porn and alcohol and cocaine and some other things when he joined the program. And he told me a lot of stuff's coming up for him right now, feelings and things like that. And the reason why it's coming up now is he's been masking this till now, right? This guy's down a ton of weight too. But we use these masks. And what I always say is people are always trying to feel better. And the goal isn't to feel better. The goal is to feel more. And so anything that's trying to make you feel better in that moment is probably masking for you to feel just your feelings and what's going on for you. And so I just encourage people to try to get rid of whatever your vice is. If it's social media, if it's porn, if it's sex, if it's alcohol, whatever it might be, and just try to sit with your feelings. It's one of the other things about going into the solitude and just going into nature without your phone is these things start to come to you a little bit and you start to see answers to this. But in that, you start to realize, oh, I'm actually sad, or oh, I'm actually scared, or maybe I'm a little bit lonely. And you figure that out. Because it's really easy to mask it, just bouncing from person to person, getting validation and all that.
It's almost like whether it's porn or food or drugs or sex, it's sedation. So it's an escape from something. And you're saying take a moment and actually find what that thing is. Get to know it
Yeah.
and
And
greet it
then,
in the first
yeah,
place.
for some people, you need to do a little bit deeper therapy, and there's
Mm.
plant medicine and stuff like that. There's therapists and different things that you can go to, different modalities. I just say whatever works for you, but I think for the most part, the best thing you do is just get some time alone away from everything and really sit with it.
Got it. And let me ask you, how could I help you as far as on your journey? If I come across somebody, what would be some way that I could support you in what you're doing, Jimmy?
Yeah, man. Any men that are looking to find community or to up level their life, you want to be around men that are kicking ass and doing cool things. That's what it's all about for us. So if you're in a place where you're like, I need better friends, or I need to up level, or I need some people to hold me accountable, or I just like to be
Mm.
inspired by the people around me, my circle, that's what it's all about for me. And so if you ever run across people looking for that, direct them to my website or my Instagram. We'd love to have them join us, man.
Yeah. What's the best way? What's the best way to either get in touch with you or do you have any kind of first commitment type of things?
My Instagram is Mr. Jimmy Rex, and on there is the links to everything that I do. And so just give me a follow there, and then just click on that, and we'd love to have you join us.
Okay, Jimmy, I know that you don't completely know me, but can you give me one piece of advice for me?
One piece of advice for you, man.
So from what you know of me, just throw it out there, man.
Man, I think I love that you just take action. You're a man of action. You try to lead with value. And so I'd say keep doing that. The reason I agreed to do a podcast on a Sunday, which I never do, is I could tell you were coming from contribution. You did your homework on me. I've had so many interviews where I get on and they're like, so what do you do? And it's, but keep putting the effort in that you are, and it'll keep opening doors for you. And so I was impressed, man.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll make the book V1.
You
We'll put that as one of our.
How to Be a Healthy Man in Toxic Times. And you just go to Amazon or
Got it.
BarnesandNoble.com or whatever. It's, yeah, under my
I
name.
listened to the Audible, which you actually read, which was nice.
I did.
A great reading, man. So we'll make that as a book recommendation for our book club. And man, if there's anything I can do for you coming up, and maybe one day I'd love to. We talked about potentially doing an event or something. That would be awesome. But don't be a stranger. I appreciate your time and thoughtfulness, and also I appreciate the vision that you have for the changes that we're making, like the social institutions that we're trying to change. So that's exciting, man. I appreciate it.
All right, man. You too. Thank you so much. This was a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks, Jimmy.